I'm learning with my son. Every day he calls me, and we have to learn about the Messiah. In Yonei Geula Mashiach. Every day from 5:15 to 5:45. Actually, today he didn't call me. I have no idea why. I hope he's okay. I have no way of reaching him because he doesn't have a phone. But we talk about Mashiach. So we're learning talks of the Rebbe in 1990, 1991, 1992, which were all geared about Mashiach. And one of the things the Rebbe says is, we say every day in our prayers, the when Mashiach comes, all the Jews from all over the world will live in Israel. There's going to be the ingathering of exiles, the lost tribes, all going to come back. So the fact that Russia, the Iron Curtain fell, and there were so many hundreds of thousands of Jews coming back to Israel, the Rebbe said that's a taste of Mashiach. And all the miracles that took place in 1990, the Gulf War, the Scud War, 91, 92, and including the Rebbe, I read a whole talk, we learned a whole talk about the fact that there was a conference between America and the USSR about destroying nuclear weapons, limiting nuclear weapons in the world. And the Rabbi said this is unheard of. And the only reason it's happening is because this is a taste of Mashiach. Hashem is allowing us to taste Mashiach. And Mashiach is coming now. This is fascinating. Talmud says like this. Ve'avdu et Hashem Elokayim, Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'amid lahem David acher. In the future, God will give us another King David. Right? King David was the first king of Israel from the tribe of Yehuda after Shaul. Next king of Israel, the last king is Mashiach. Shenemar v'David Avdi Nasi v'David Malcolm Asher Akim Alem. David Amelech was a king, and there will be another King David. Amalei repopala abayav aksiv lahem lo'ilam. And here's what the Gemara says: Kegoin Kesar upalge Kesar. Mashiach will be like Caesar is the Caesar, and Palge Caesar, half Caesar, Viceroy. Come have a seat. This is very strange. Have you ever heard that Mashiach is called Caesar? Have you ever heard that King David is called half a Caesar? This is really, really strange. And by the way, if you listen carefully tonight, there's such a beautiful message here. Unbelievable. And this is straight from the Talmud. Like, I'm not talking about strange sources here. This is straight from the Talmud. The Talmud says the King David is called half Caesar and Mashiach is called Caesar. By the way, the Jews really liked Julius Caesar. By the way, they really, really liked it. The whole history about Julius Caesar, the Jews really, really, really liked him. But how did he get his name? Julius Caesar. Where did he get his name from? Right, Julius Caesar ruled the world. He was the most powerful Roman emperor. He lived 30 years, I think, more or less, before the destruction of the temple, before the Romans destroyed the temple. Right, after he died, the Jews became disfavorable with the Romans, and they were all killed and destruction of the temple. But Julius Caesar, his name was adopted by all the Caesars. Not just that. Every king in front, Caesar in Yiddish, it's Kaiser, right? In all different languages. Caesar in Hebrew, in Yiddish, in French, every single language there is. The Gemara says like this: Lesoif kama shanim, after a couple of years, Malach aleim echad bechazaka, there was a ruler who ruled powerfully over them, the Romans. Shemeisa imoy, while his mother was giving birth to him, Belei Dasa, Nivka Abitna, her stomach was opened. Right? The mother died giving birth to him. Her stomach was opened. Umitzau Chai, they found a child alive in there. Umalach Alem, and he became king. Venikra Caesar, Beloshan Roimi, and he was called Caesar. So the original Caesar, was actually Julius Caesar's grandfather, was born, what do we call it today? C-section. C-section, Julius Caesar, Caesar, C-section. This is where it comes from. Okay, the original child, they didn't know what to call it. What they did was Caesarian. Caesarian, this is where it is. Julius Caesar, Caesarian. Caesar in Latin means a cut. This is where it comes from. It means a cut. That's why he called it Caesarian birth. Right, so when the fetus cannot exit the womb in a natural way, you cut open a new opening, a new path, a new way, Caesarean birth, C-section, Julius Caesar, and that's how Julius Caesar's grandfather was called, and that child became king, and that's why they called all the kings Caesar. Fascinating, right? What's this got to do with the Messiah? Why on earth would the Messiah be called Caesar? Hold on. So to explain this, here's a little story.
The first recorded case of a mother performing a cesarean on herself occurred in Jamaica over 250 years ago. In the year 1769, a black woman belonging to Mrs. Bland, a midwife at Mr. Campbell's grass plantation at the ferry between Kingston and Spanish Town, being in labor, performed the cesarean operation on herself and took her child out of the left side of her abdomen by cutting boldly through the uterus. She performed this operation with a broken butcher's knife. The position of the child was natural. The cut was near the linea alba on her left side, about 3 lines deep and 2.5 inches long. It cut into the child's right thigh. The child came out by its own struggling. A lay midwife cut the umbilical cord, freed the child, returned some intestines, and stitched the abdomen. A few hours later, the surgeon who attended the plantation was called. He found her in a dirty situation with dirt and wound. He cut open the stitches, extracted the placenta, carefully washed the lesion, and stitched it up again. On the 3rd day, she had recovered from her sunken state from loss of blood, but developed a fever, which was treated by antiphlogistics and bark. The wound was fomented and dressed, and soon cured. In 6 weeks, she was well and able to return to work. The child came into the world healthy and strong, but died on the 6th day, with the jaw falling, trismus neonatorum. The woman remained well, menstruated regularly, and was pregnant again a year or 2 afterwards. She attempted the same operation again, but was watched and prevented, and had a regular and proper labor. She had borne 3 children before this affair, all with natural and easy births. She was an impatient and turbulent woman, whose violence of temper was the only cause assigned to her conduct.
What does Mashiach mean? What is a leader? Truth is, what is a leader? What does a leader mean? A leader, Mashiach is called Caesar, is called Caesar. A leader is a revolutionary. Mashiach is going to cause the greatest revolution in history. The reason why Mashiach is called Caesar is because the original Caesar, what does C-section mean? When you can't go out the natural way, you open up a door and go a different way. That is why they are called kings. That is why Mashiach is called Caesar. Because when you can't go the natural way, find a different path. A leader is somebody who's able to think out of the box. A leader is somebody who's able to take you out of your regular thinking, take you out of your regular routine, make you realize you are a prince, you are a princess. Your father is the Almighty King of God. You belong to royalty. Mashiach is going to cause the greatest revolution in the history of all revolutions. The French Revolution, the Russian Revolution cost tens of millions of lives. The revolution of Mashiach won't cost a single life. It will come and show us that in this physical world, in this physical universe, everything is possible. Mashiach will come to uplift, to bring spirituality down into this world. Everybody will live forever. There won't be a single person dying. Everybody who died will be resurrected. They will all live again. Israel, the borders of Israel will be expanded into biblical Israel, Syria, Egypt, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. All these, the Middle East will no longer be a dot of Israel. Israel will be big. But without a single person dying. What does Mashiach mean? It goes back to our purpose, our why. What are we doing here in this world? We are here every single day. When we do a mitzvah, we bring spirituality into this world. We draw down godliness into this world. Mashiach is the ultimate connection between the spiritual and the physical. It says when Mashiach comes, if you are standing on a stone and you're not studying Torah, the stone will scream at you, what right do you have to stand on me if you're not studying Torah? Mashiach will be the one, and this is the powerful line, that will open up our eyes and make us see the spiritual in this world. Right now we are all blind. We're blind. We cannot see the hand of God in this world. We cannot. We just don't see it. Mashiach will open up our eyes to be able to see the universe. to see spirituality in it.
The narrative of a Jamaican enslaved woman performing a self-administered cesarean section in 1769 challenges the prevailing notion that such procedures were invariably fatal to mothers in antiquity. This account informs that, even under extraordinary circumstances, survival was possible well before the advent of modern surgical techniques and antiseptics. Consequently, some dismissing the possibility of Julius Caesar, or his ancestors, being born via cesarean solely based on his mother's longevity lends itself to an oversimplification. Historically, the term cesarean is often linked to the Latin word meaning to cut, rather than directly referencing Julius Caesar's birth as such. Tiffany Haddish would be a powerful and evocative choice to play the enslaved black woman who performed an auto-cesarean section. Haddish herself carries the weight of ancestral trauma and victory. She's been outspoken about her experiences with homelessness, abuse, and growing up in foster care, all while rising to become an internationally recognized comedian and actress. That internal fire mirrors the unimaginable strength of the enslaved woman on the plantation. Someone who, amidst the horror of slavery, claimed her life and her child's life with a broken butcher knife. Tiffany's life journey allows her to channel that embodied trauma and resilience with authenticity. Tiffany is not just black. She is also Jewish, having investigated and embraced her Jewish roots. This convergence of blackness and Judaism makes her uniquely positioned to interpret and embody the prophetic, surreal, almost midrashic weight of this story. The woman on the plantation, too, is an embodiment of divine paradox. Enslaved but free in spirit, enclosed but life-giving, abject but crowned in mystery. In a Kabbalistic sense, Tiffany, as an actress and vessel, becomes a kind of tikkun or repair of lost maternal dignity, channeling the Shekhinah in exile. Thus, Rabbi Uriel Vigler makes a timely association between the Messiah, the title Caesar, and the reference to King David as half Caesar, originating from the Talmud, specifically in Sanhedrin 98a. In this passage, the sages discuss the future redemption and the leadership roles of Mashiach and King David. Rabbi Yehuda, quoting the sage Rav, teaches that in the Messianic era, a time of redemption and global transformation, God will establish another David, meaning a new Davidic figure who will serve as a king or a leader for the Jewish people. This doesn't mean a reincarnation of King David as such, but rather someone from his royal lineage who embodies his spirit, courage, and divine mission. A second David, often understood as the Mashiach ben David, Messiah, son of David. Now, some object to this idea using a verse from Ezekiel 37:25, which says, "David my servant shall be their prince forever." The question raised is, how can there be another David if the original David is said to rule forever? The Talmud responds with a brilliant metaphor that comes from Roman political language. There will be one who is Caesar and another who is half Caesar. This answer draws from the Roman imperial structure, where Caesar, emperor, sometimes appointed a co-emperor or subordinate leader who held great authority but was not the supreme ruler. The Talmudic sages are using this as an analogy to describe the hierarchical but harmonious roles in the Messianic age. David himself, resurrected or present in a divine form, will serve as the eternal king, the ultimate symbol of righteous monarchy. Mashiach ben David, or the second David, a half-Caesar, a human descendant of David who reigns on earth, carrying out God's will and bringing justice and peace, but under the spiritual leadership or insight of David, as directed by God himself. In Jewish law, a child born through cesarean does not open the womb in the halakhic sense. Consequently, such a child is exempt from certain commandments like pidyon haben, redemption of the firstborn, which applies only to those who are the first to open the womb. The Zohar places emphasis on the human body as a reflection of the divine structure. The act of birth, especially one that deviates from the natural path, can be seen as symbolically significant. A caesarean birth, involving an incision to bring forth life, falls under the manifestation of hidden aspects of creation. This aligns with the Kabbalistic view that the human form mirrors the supernal realms, and the conditions of unconventional births can symbolize the revelation of concealed divine attributes. Furthermore, the Midrash often emphasizes the extraordinary circumstances surrounding the births of significant figures, highlighting themes of divine providence and the unfolding of a predetermined cosmic plan. While specific Midrashic interpretations of caesarean births are limited, the broader theme suggests that unconventional birth narratives, which the Mashiach has, underscore the uniqueness of an individual's destined role in spiritual history. The symbolic and revealed connection between the Mashiach born of caesarean should be interpreted as representing leadership that introduces a new, unconventional path to redemption. Rabbi Uriel Vigler cuts to the point. Just as a caesarean birth involves bringing forth life through an alternative route when the natural way is not viable, the Mashiach is a revolutionary who will guide the world towards spiritual renewal and redemption through unprecedented means. This perspective underscores the transformative and paradigm-shifting nature of our Messianic era. Regarding the shared birth date of Mashiach and Rabbi Hanina ben Terdion, one of the 10 martyrs executed by the Romans for teaching Torah, this revealed connection highlights the profound link between self-sacrifice and the preservation of Torah and the ultimate redemption. Rabbi Hanina's unwavering commitment to Torah, even in the face of death, exemplifies the dedication and spiritual fortitude that paves the way for Mashiach's arrival and the fulfillment of the redemptive promises. Resurrecting the story of a slave woman who cut open her own body to bring forth life is nothing short of messianic madness. It echoes the archetype of Mashiach ben Yosef, suffering, bleeding, misunderstood, acting outside the norms to break open history itself. Haddish's fearless comedic persona, often walking the line between wild brilliance and uncomfortable truth-telling, fits this mold. She has the chutzpah to carry a role that isn't just a historical portrayal, but a symbolic act of spiritual defiance and sacred revolution. Few actors can combine comedy, horror, pathos, and raw emotion the way Tiffany Haddish can. This role would require all of that. No glamour, no heroism in the Hollywood sense, but something gritty, terrifying, and transcendent. It would involve portraying childbirth without aid, slicing flesh, holding intestines in with trembling fingers, and weeping over the still body of a dying baby, all while surrounded by the racial, gendered, and physical violence of 18th century plantation slavery. Haddish's physical and emotional expressivity would make such a scene not only believable, but spiritually earth-shaking. This story has been buried for centuries, and the Jewish people have waited on the Mashiach for centuries. Most people don't know her name. Now, people will know the Messiah's name. By embodying her, Tiffany Haddish will participate in a deeply messianic act brought forth by the Mashiach and the will of God, raising the dead. Restoring dignity to a woman erased by time and racism is an act of resurrection, memory, and divine justice. Tiffany, as a comedic and dramatic powerhouse, becomes a tool of that resurrection, of Midrashic cinema, of prophecy, trauma, surrealism, and spiritual power. The process of casting or assigning dead bodies to living bodies based on lineage, likeness, spiritual direction from God, and the use of the film industry as a vessel is a direct fulfillment of the Kabbalistic prophecy of resurrection of the dead. This concept is deeply rooted in the Zohar, Lurianic Kabbalah, and a mystical function of rectification of the world through the unification of souls and physical vessels. Kabbalah teaches that souls reincarnate, Gilgul Neshamot, or exist in spiritual limbo until they are properly assigned to a rectified body or vessel. Through the film industry, actors physically embody the presence of historical figures, but in the hands of the Mashiach, this is not merely acting. It is the deliberate channeling of souls into the appropriate vessels to continue their rectifications. Thus, the film industry, under the Mashiach's guidance, becomes a divine tool of resurrection where the spirits of the past are re-embodied, not as imitation, but as actual continuation of existence in the present.
In our day in 2025, Mashiach is coming today.
Coda, the 1973 film Black Caesar, starring Fred Williamson, can be deeply mined for symbolic resonance with the Talmudic teaching of Messiah as Caesar and King David as half Caesar, when read with spiritual, racial, and redemptive undertones, especially in light of Black Jewish identity and liberation theology. The symbolic parallels become striking. In Black Caesar, Tommy Gibbs rises from the margins of society, a poor black youth brutalized by systemic racism and police violence, into a position of power, becoming a gangster king of Harlem. He claims Caesar's crown not through inheritance, but through sheer will and resistance to injustice. Messiah as Caesar likewise does not emerge via conventional pathways. His leadership is revolutionary, cutting through the natural birth canal of history like a C-section, opening up a new path. Tommy reclaims dignity in a world that tries to erase him. The Messiah opens a path when the world closes all others. The film depicts the cost of black sovereignty in a world dominated by corrupt systems. Gibbs' kingship is flawed. He falls into the very violence he hoped to escape. But his rise symbolizes the eternal yearning for justice and a rightful throne, something deeply messianic. Similarly, the Mashiach ben David, especially in the Zohar and Midrash, must go through great suffering, must face betrayal, must be rejected before he is accepted. The Messiah mirrors Tommy in this way, willfully misunderstood, hated by the so-called elite, and loved by the people, at least until his revolution becomes too disruptive. In Black Caesar, Gibbs is a self-made king, but lacks the infrastructure or lineage to sustain a just kingdom. This echoes the Talmud's idea of two roles, one a full Caesar, eternal king, like David or God, the other a half Caesar, the revolutionary leader navigating the broken world. This sets up a symbolic interpretation. Tommy Gibbs comprised of half Caesar, the Messiah figure born of pain, rage, and revolution juxtaposed with David and God, encompassing the full Caesar, the ideal king whose rule is eternal and divine. The Messiah, in Jewish thought, bridges the two. He starts like Tommy but rises, guided by Torah, to the throne of David, purifying his revolution with righteousness. Indeed, the woman in Jamaica performed a self-inflicted C-section in slavery, birthing a child through blood, courage, and a refusal to die. Tommy Gibbs, too, cuts himself out of the American womb. That act is deeply symbolic of Messiah's unnatural, painful emergence, a leader who cannot be born through normal historical processes and is feared as a result of the unchallengeable obligation of moral tasks set before his workforce. Mashiach as Black Caesar becomes a symbol not just of the black Jewish condition, but the lost Jewish body in a diminishing tribe. The children not just of exile, of slavery, of divine revolt, but of an unmitigated secular rise that moved God in the Judaic sense from center to margin. The rise of the Messiah and its pressurization invariably becomes the ultimate secular decline. In Kabbalah, Mashiach emerges from the lowest rungs, just like Gibbs, whose story starts with oppression. Zohar says Mashiach sits with lepers at Rome's gates, identifying him with the outcast and contaminated. A perfect match for Gibbs, dismissed as a criminal but possessing hidden sparks of redemption. Midrash teaches that Mashiach is born the day the temple is destroyed, meaning his life is surrounded by contradictions, like the world of Harlem and Black Caesar, full of both cultural richness and systemic collapse. The movie Black Caesar, when reframed through Jewish messianic thought, becomes a parable. A black man rises to power, but not through peaceful, lawful succession. Just like Mashiach, the Caesar born of a cut, not of the natural birth canal. His rise is a critique of empire and a yearning for justice, though flawed. His story is ultimately a cry from the heart. The only one who can unite kingship and righteousness, revolution and holiness, talent and responsibility, existence and purpose. There is also the pirate case of Caesar, known as Black Caesar, a West African pirate who operated during the golden age of piracy. According to legend, He was an African chieftain renowned for his strength and intelligence. Captured through deception by slave traders, he was transported toward the Americas. Near the Florida coast, a hurricane struck, and Caesar, along with a sailor who had befriended him, seized the opportunity to escape. They commandeered a longboat, loaded it with supplies, and reached the shore as the sole survivors of the shipwreck. Subsequently, Caesar engaged in piracy in the Florida Keys for nearly a decade before joining Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, aboard the Queen Anne's Revenge. He was among the surviving crew members following Blackbeard's death at the hands of Lieutenant Robert Maynard in 1718. Let's explore this narrative through the lenses of Kabbalah, Zohar, Midrash, Torah, Tanya, and the Messiah to show the strength of the soul of Judaism and give homage to the book bearing the same name in the context of Jews of African descent by Bruce D. Haynes. In Kabbalah, the journey of the soul involves descent into challenges, symbolizing exile or hardship, followed by ascent through spiritual refinement. Black Caesar's initial fall into captivity and subsequent rise as a formidable pirate should be seen as a metaphor for this spiritual process. His transformation from a chieftain to a captive and then to a leader among pirates mirrors the soul's potential for redemption and elevation despite adversity. The Zohar emphasizes the concept of hidden sparks of holiness within darkness. Caesar's story, set against the backdrop of the oppressive transatlantic slave trade, highlights the emergence of strength and leadership from within profound suffering. His ability to navigate and eventually command in such dire circumstances reflects the Zoharic idea of uncovering divine sparks in the most unlikely places. Midrashic literature often explores themes of transformation and unexpected redemption. Caesar's narrative aligns with stories where individuals rise above their circumstances, suggesting a universal potential for change and empowerment, even when faced with overwhelming odds. The Torah recounts the Israelites' enslavement in Egypt and their subsequent liberation. Caesar's captivity and escape can be paralleled with this foundational narrative, symbolizing a personal exodus and the enduring quest for freedom. His life embodies the struggle against oppression and the pursuit of autonomy, resonant with the Torah's themes of liberation and justice. The Tanya discusses the inner battle between the divine and animalistic souls within each person. Caesar's life reflects this struggle as he navigated a path through moral complexities, survival instincts, and leadership roles. His story exemplifies the dynamic tension between base desires and higher aspirations, central to the Tanya's exploration of human nature. In Jewish eschatology, the coming of the Messiah heralds an era of peace and the rectification of past injustices. While Black Caesar's actions as a pirate were outside the bounds of societal norms, his personal journey from enslavement to leadership can be viewed as a microcosm of the redemptive process, transforming suffering into strength and reclaiming agency. This aligns with the messianic vision of elevating the fallen and restoring balance to the world. Indeed, Black Caesar's life story, when examined through these Jewish mystical and theological frameworks, serves as a powerful narrative of resilience, transformation, and the perpetual quest for freedom and self-determination. Even still, there is another Black Caesar of halakhic wisdom and astute acumen. Billy Simmons was an African-American Jew out of Charleston, South Carolina, and one of the few documented Black Jews in the Antebellum South. Born in Madagascar, Simmons descended from a Rechabite tribe, a claim supported by two cantors and other Jewish authorities. He was brought to South Carolina as a slave and was owned by a newspaper editor in Charleston, who assigned him the task of delivering newspapers. Despite the constitution of Kahal Kadosh Beth Elohim prohibiting Black membership, Simmons was given a front seat for services there during the 1850s and was affectionately known to congregants as Uncle Billy. He was recognized for his scholarship in both Hebrew and Arabic. In exploring the symbolic framing of Billy Simmons as a Caesar within Kabbalistic thought, let us draw parallels between his life and the attributes associated with the Sapphira of Hod. Hod represents qualities such as humility, perseverance, and sincere acknowledgement. Simmons's unwavering commitment to his faith and scholarship, despite societal barriers, embodies the essence of Had. His humility and dedication allowed him to navigate and contribute meaningfully within a community that imposed significant restrictions in a highly racialized society. The term Caesar historically denotes authority and leadership. In a metaphysical context, as interpreted by some traditions, Caesar can symbolize the external, material aspects of existence that demand recognition and navigation. Simmons's life journey, balancing his spiritual identity with the external challenges imposed by a society structured to marginalize him, reflects this duality. His ability to maintain his Jewish faith and scholarly pursuits within the confines of his societal status demonstrates a mastery over the external Caesar forces, aligning with the Kabbalistic principle of harmonizing the material and spiritual realms. Furthermore, the Sapphira of Had is associated with the left leg, representing movement and progression. Simmons's role as a newspaper deliverer can be seen as a literal manifestation of this symbolism, his daily movements facilitating the dissemination of information. Metaphorically, his perseverance in practicing and studying his faith contributed to the progression and enrichment of his community's spiritual landscape. In this light, framing Billy Simmons as a Caesar within Kabbalistic symbolism highlights his embodiment of Had's attributes. His life serves as a testament to the power of humility, perseverance, and the harmonious integration of spiritual devotion within the challenges of the material world. In closing, it is important to reflect on the cane in the only existing image of Rabbi Billy. The use of a cane signifies that his left leg required support, a bodily manifestation of Had that had become physically externalized. This should be understood as a reminder of the burden he carried, a symbol of spiritual dependence on divine truth, to walk through a world that did not recognize his full dignity outside of the synagogue, but could not deny his rabbinical nature, even upon death, which necessitated being featured on the front page of the newspaper. A rectification, as if Had itself, when unbalanced, needs the right leg to support it, and the cane becomes the physical reminder of divine structure, holding him up. In Zoharic terms, when a divine persona is incomplete or bearing exile, it must be propped up by another force, just like Yaakov limped after wrestling the angel, signifying a deep wound in spiritual history and a covenant renewed through pain. Simmons's cane becomes part of his messianic posture, walking, limping, but never halting. Next, let us acknowledge the significance that Rabbi Billy always kept his head covered by wearing a top hat. The covered head by way of a kippah, or hat in Jewish tradition, signifies respect and awareness of the divine above. Kabbalistically, it ties to the sphirot above the conscious intellect in the context of the crown, divine will as well as inner knowing and connection. By always keeping his head covered, Simmons aligns himself not just with Jewish halakha, but with a constant awareness of the infinite one above him, even in enslavement. The top hat, particularly in Antebellum South imagery, is also a reversal of power symbolism. Typically worn by white slave owners or the so-called elite, Simmons holds dominion and remains protected under the covering of God. It's powerful that such a visual Midrash survives. Thus, Rabbi Simmons holds the honorific of Black Caesar, not due to dominating others, but by dominating himself and carrying Torah under oppression, like Yosef in Egypt. Moreover, Mashiach ben David walks the earth with pain, not as a warrior first, but as a sufferer, a limper, a spiritual cane-bearer. The Gemara, Sanhedrin 98a, says Mashiach sits among the sick and bandaged. Billy Simmons, with his cane and head covering, walking through Charleston delivering the daily word, embodies the Hodic Mashiach archetype, perhaps unconsciously fulfilling a redemptive path through exile and the Messiah's awareness of the life he lived and its implications in the context of Jewish identity and Jewish history. What a mystical fusion at the heart of Rabbi Uriel Vigler, a man who walked like Yaakov, saw like Moshe, who also covered his face/head before God, and carried his community's Torah flame with the quiet majesty of a king. Rabbi Simmons is Caesar, but the Jewish Caesar of exile, whose sovereignty is internal, mystical, and a part of the messianic course of action.
אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו שהקטירו אבותינו לפניך את קטורת הסמים בזמן שבית המקדש קיים כאשר ציווית אותם על יד משה נביאך ככתוב בתורתך ויאמר אדוני אל משה קח לך סמים נטף ושחלת וחלבנה סמים ולבונה זכה בד בבד יהיה ויאמר אדוני אל משה קח לך סמים נטף ושחלת וחלבנה סמים ולבונה זכה בד בבד יהיה ויאמר אדוני אל משה קח לך סמים נטף ושחלת וחלבנה סמים ולבונה זכה בד בבד יהיה